If you remember 3 weeks back, the crypto market was mostly going sideways. This past week, it has been very different. ETH has taken off massively the past, like a week ago, getting close to previous bull run highs, but then pulling back a little bit. Other altcoins were heating up as well, but then also cooled off. Now, the question I have is this the beginning of the altcoin rally? I know that's the same question on many of your minds. Well, let's dig deeper today and let's take a look. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. If you, like me, came into crypto because you realize there is solid potential here for life-changing gains over a greater 4 to 8 year period, and you're looking for discussion on becoming a solid, unshakable, and savage crypto investor, much like a Navy SEAL of crypto investing, you're in exactly the right place. I was once new to the crypto space 8 years ago. I didn't know at that time that you grow a huge YouTube channel by talking about things that were already high. See, I used YouTube as my content to learn about crypto because I liked the long form content. But I didn't realize incentives were all wrong. You grow a huge YouTube channel by being overly optimistic for why high prices would go higher. And so I didn't realize for the first year that all these incentives were wrong. And but I was hungry for analysis on cryptos that were underpriced and undervalued. And I didn't find a YouTube channel that really did it, really covered that. So in 2020, I created that. Since I was doing all this research on undervalued projects anyway, why not share it? Now, here we discuss crypto as an investment and discuss the most important things like the overall 4-year investment cycle. That trend has continued since 2013. We discuss specific pros and cons of projects, the risks of those projects, and guesses the upside if they come together well. So if you're looking for these deeper discussions, well, you're in the right place. If you want even more in-depth discussions where there's a lot of alpha that doesn't ever get talked about on the YouTube channel, join our private Patreon group, and this allows you access to our Rainmaker private Discord. You will find a whole nother level of discussions, much, much deeper there, and it's probably exactly the group you're looking for. This is where the best discussion and best info is, and there are other benefits too, but you'll have to join us to find out. Do note, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul invests in many things, and none of this be taken as financial advice. So make it rain on that like button. Strap in for the show. Paul, welcome to the channel.
Great to be here as always. Even in this quite tedious August month, there's been quite a lot of activity. I've just had a quick look at one of the picks, the OKB. Whoever picked that, that's a crazy breakout, which just goes to show that there's still life out there and there's a lot of interesting things to be looking at. But yeah, in the short term, we're still in a bit of a grinding month, and it's a good time to take a holiday, and but always keeping an eye on the charts, of course, which is what we're doing.
What's interesting is historically for stocks don't do much. And I was thinking that held true for crypto as well, because I hadn't really thought through August. As we were talking about it last week, one of our viewers pointed out that the charts, and we looked specifically at the chart for August on the 4th year when crypto usually goes crazy. And August usually sees some action happening. In fact, for the past 3 cycles, it did. And that was news to me. That was fascinating. Now, it didn't have massive loft tops, but there were some significant increases, especially for what the stock market would consider significant increases. But for crypto, I mean, overall the markets went sometimes 10 to 30% to the upside in August, the crypto market. Now, stocks, that would be crazy. That's not what happened. Stocks generally are pretty settled through August. And is that mostly because a lot of the traders, the owners of the companies, the big traders, the ones that make the big decisions, are on vacation, Paul? Is that why generally markets are slow in August?
Yeah, it's really a holiday month for most people in Europe. certainly in the UK, definitely in the UK, and I thought pretty much in America as well, but I don't know. I haven't got as much experience. Maybe Canada, where you are, perhaps, but it just feels like everything, all volumes tend to kind of go down, and like it's just really quiet on the roads, and everyone's away. So and no one wants to do any business. So if you like whatever events you're doing, it's best not to do them in August because most people will just say that they're away, and it's a lot to do with the school holidays. I know people who haven't got kids, it might not apply to them as much, but you are a slave to the holiday periods for schools, and schools break up in sort of end of July and then come back in September. So if you haven't got kids, it's a great time to go away in September. And of course, if you have got kids, you've got to go away in August because you're forced to. And also the weather's good in August. And, in the UK, the weather changes very quickly. It's already starting to get cold, or the summer feels like it's already over. So it's for those reasons. Certainly in the banks, that would be a factor. And I know when I was an analyst, a trader in a bank, it was a great time to take a holiday, for example, after Christmas, because everyone would be off at Christmas, and I'd work Christmas, and then I'd take January off, and at that time, those first couple of weeks, because it was really quiet for me to take those times off when everyone goes back to work. It was much better. And until you have kids, you don't realize how much more you have to pay for flights and hotels and everything else, because you're forced to because of the holiday periods. I mean, it's literally within one day, the flights could be many hundreds of pounds difference, sometimes even more, just because it's a holiday day when everyone's rushing back or rushing out. So yeah, it's I mean, but you have to obviously keep looking at the markets because there's always potential that things will act differently, and everything is, this first time that we've had a second Trump cycle, and how's it going to operate? We had a correction and rally up, and you have to put everything into context. But as a general kind of rule of thumb, August is quite quiet.
Yeah, good news. We are live. Chris Ashby saying, "Morning, Paul and Jay. Thanks for all you do. Happy Wednesday." Chris is behind putting the timestamps on this show, so thank you, Chris, for doing that. Those that catch it later and get the recording, that helps them if they want to revisit anything. Kuma says, "Good morning, Rain. Exciting OMI news yesterday." There was. I'm curious to see what Paul thinks about OMI as the at the prices now. We'll take a look at OMI. I'll add that to the queue.
By the way, I've just realized that I was saying I only had an hour, but I was supposed to be going to a book launch this evening. A friend of mine's launching a book. I've just realized it's next week. So,
nice.
Okay, so I can stay a bit longer, but I have actually got someone I need to really speak to as well. So if we could do something in between, if that's all right. So apologies for that. So yeah.
And Crypto's waking up. PENGU went to did it as PENGU bot, and
cool.
We'll take a look at PENGU, and let's jump right into it. First, let's briefly take a look at what other markets are doing, and then we'll get right into Bitcoin and ETH, and then some of the picks for this week.
Yeah, I think these are really good comments, by the way, and you're right to point them out, because it does feel like things are waking up a bit. I mean, that big move in ETH has told us something, that it's not all Bitcoin show, and there are other things out there. And we did mention that. We did look at the charts, and the spreads looked like things were moving towards ETH, and we know what follows from ETH. Everything else kind of trickles down. So we might be in a bit of a correction for Bitcoin, a bit of a consolidation. The main point is that I don't think that we're at the top of the market as yet, because we haven't seen the end of trend signals that normally accompany the major reversal. But that doesn't mean that some parts of it could be getting a little bit tired, and we shall see. But with regard to equities, actually, I'm going to look at NASDAQ first, because the NASDAQ has actually come off pretty hard. And it's not going to take much for this to complete what could be a double top formation. again, it's these August markets, right? So they're kind of moving in a non-correlated way, which is like, if I can show you this chart of the Nasdaq coming down, but I'll show you a chart of the UK stock market going up, and a chart of, say, the Toronto stock market, the Canadian stock market going up, and even the CAC 40, which is the French stock market, which is really underperforming, that looks like it's breaking out. And the Italian stock market, which is usually a laggard, it usually doesn't move, that's breaking away and moving much higher. So there are a few things that are having a bit of a correction. I wonder whether people are worried about, tech stocks perhaps running a little too far, and we might see a bit of a move into, say, the Dow type stocks, which look pretty steady at these levels. It looks like the Dow does want to continue higher. So the spread between the Dow and the Nasdaq, which is a synthetic trade, that may fall against the Nasdaq further and move towards the DAX. Sorry, move towards the Dow. But either way, what we're looking at is we're still in a risk on mode, even if we're adjusting things slightly. The charts are still bullish. Things still look like they're going to go up, despite the fact that we're in this August period. We've got a bit of a top coming in the S&P, and that looks like it's coming down a little bit. And Russell, that's trying to work its way up, but smaller cap stocks have underperformed a little bit, but they're still doing much better than the broader market thought. Everyone was pretty much shorting it down here and expecting it to go down, but that's still going higher. So equities seem to be doing okay. The Chinese stock market, lo and behold, still breaking higher, still looking good. Hong Kong as well, that's working its way higher. Those are really important for me. I want to see Asia doing very well, and Japan, that's broken into a new all-time high after sort of, I think the last time it started its bear market in the 90s, or maybe a bit later than that. So it's been in a severe bear market for a long time. It's taken a long time to break that into that new high. Yeah, actually, let's see if I've got enough data. I haven't got enough data, but I think you have to go back to like the late 90s or the mid 90s to see this high again. And so it's taken a long time to break into a new all-time high, but that is significant. It just shows you that there's a lot of risk on about, and it should continue. With regard to things like gold, and gold's still in this range, silver's still in this range. I was just looking at something there. So silver's still in this range. Looks like that's going to break up. Palladium, which was a trade that I thought was looking really interesting, it kind of broke up. It's come back to retest the 50% area, and we'll see if that goes back up again. It's definitely underperforming again, but I'm wondering if that will go higher. So silver's doing okay. Broadly speaking, we got this big resistance level here. If that can get through, and all that's telling us is that risk on is still out there. We obviously got the big move down in copper, which was not great, but base metals are important. And although I think this possibly might have one more go at the downside, the big picture is still bullish. I think they'll hoover that up. The Chinese are going to want to hoover that up anyway, because they're going to need copper, and raw materials look like they're going to be in demand going forward. So we can see the broader picture is for risk on. And when it comes to the US dollar, it's consolidating. I mean, it's been quite a nice clean downward trend. It's come up and hit 100. It's come off again. It's kind of going sideways here. So I wouldn't want to push it in either direction right now. I'm not sure whether it's going to have another go at 100 or break down, but I think bigger picture, it's clearer, even if the shorter term's a little less obvious. Still think US rates are set to fall. There was a PPI number, I think, last week that was very bullish, or hawkish, I should say, and a lot of people kind of changed their view and said, interest rates are not going to go down in September. But I don't think that's right. I still think that rates will go down, and that will power the market up. But we may see a bit of a correction in between. So, Yeah, I mean, August markets, that's what it feels like. So if we go to Bitcoin, um, if you look on a big picture chart, all it's really doing is correcting a little bit. We may have made a double top here. And all that means is that market has a bit of a correction back. There's plenty of support points. 108 would be a good target for me. I think if it comes back to 108, should have good support there. If it goes a bit beyond that, might be a bit uncomfortable. But is that the end of the trend? I don't think so. I think if anything, it will take months to cause a top, and I just don't think we're there yet. So intermediate correction's fine. What was the high? Let's have a look at what the high was. 124,000. I mean, it's still in an upward trend, and it's been called the end of the trend many, many times. But yeah, the interest in ETH, I think, is look at this today's percentages. Bitcoin's up 1%, ETH's up 5%. So that's telling you that on the spreads, it is starting to actually outperform, or continuing to outperform. And if we look at the actual spreads, which is this one, remember this line that we had last week? It came right back up to it. We said it could pull back. It might make an inverse head and shoulders pattern, which is sort of what it did. That's why ETH came off so aggressively. And for those who like to jump in a bit late into the trade, well, they don't like to, but they kind of jump in on the basis of headlines. They're kind of buying it after the market had its initial surge. And then, of course, those people, if they're trading on leverage, they get forced out of the market, and then they go, oh, that didn't work, and it's all over again. And that's when it consolidates and goes back up again. So I think this could be interesting for a while longer in terms of ETH playing catch up on Bitcoin. So I don't think it's necessarily a bearish call for either. Well, it wouldn't be for ETH, but I don't think it's a bearish call for Bitcoin. I just think Bitcoin could consolidate while ETH catches up. And by consolidate, we've got to accept that there's a lot of volatility in this market. Bitcoin going down to 108 is really not a lot for it. It can do that. Because it is so volatile. It could probably still go down to 100,000 and be in an upward trend, and dropping like 25%. Any other market, that would be crazy, but for Bitcoin, that's easily possible. I don't think it will go down that far, but that's just I don't think it will. If it does, it does. But as far as the longer term outlook, and I'm looking more towards the end of this year and into next year, I still believe that the market will be bought up and it will go higher.
I'm trying to read Jackson's comment here. Ask your favorite AI of every financial ledger in history, clay tablets, bank databases, blockchains, which is the most honest and why? No caveats. No, it depends. Just truth. Huh. Well, yeah, blockchain's the most honest because it can't be manipulated the way databases. Clay tablets was really honest. Once they wrote it, it was kind of set in stone.
Yeah, I mean,
double books.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think it's one that we talked about many months ago about the whole what this technology is. Like, yeah, you're absolutely right. There was a time when only certain people in the village could write, and therefore they would record stuff, and only certain people could read, and only religious people could read at one stage. So they would read the Bible, and it wasn't until people learned how to read that they got that inverted commas technology. So they had to do stuff through them. But yeah, an immutable blockchain is very important. But you have to also remember that, wasn't it the story of ETH that they had that hack and they had to start again?
Yeah, they rolled it back. They're like, oh, let's just roll it back from before this hack happened and all this money was drained.
Let's just say it wasn't
where ownership was at this stage.
Exactly. And it's a bit tricky. Depends whose hands it's in, I guess. But yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't know why this technology isn't being used for things like voting for elections, because it's perfect for that. It's
There's too many
immutable.
politicians that are benefiting from the existing system that are in office for that to happen yet.
So it could be that. It could be that indeed.
Because
I mean,
those that are cheating that are now in office, they don't want to eliminate cheating. So there's just too many, right? Because the people would say, yeah, why not put it on blockchain? Let's make sure everyone's getting elected fairly. But, people don't enact the laws their elected representatives do. And the elected ones that are cheating aren't going to go for that. They're not going to tell you that that's why. They'll just ignore it like most of them are doing right now.
Yeah. I think that's what it should be used for, and
Right.
it would make sense.
It is a perfect setup for that. One person, one vote. Goes what it is. You can make it unreadable by anything but the election system, so politicians can't go and say, who didn't vote for me, and let's punish them in their lives. It's a great setup. And Charles Hoskinson with Cardano has been working on that. And Trump has talked about putting the elections on blockchain. We'll see. I think, just because he's a Republican, I bet you there's some Republicans who have cheated, and they're not going to be favorable to that, but they won't say that that's the reason. And there's some Democrats that, well, right now the Democrats oppose anything Trump wants to do. So he has to get some support with either all of his party. Keep in mind that if there's Republicans that are cheating, they're not going to want that. And then he's not going to be able to get the Democrats to vote with him, because right now they're just opposing everything he does. So that's a problem in the U.S. with getting that done as of now. So until enough people get behind blockchain and really push for that, that's when that happens. Well, let's jump into OKB and take a look at what you see going on there.
Let's have a look. Okay, so this looks like a bad price, in the sense that it looks like someone's accidentally put this price in, but I don't know what's happened here. But there was no indication really that this was going to do this, so I don't know why it's done this. There's obviously, I mean, maybe Trump or maybe Musk or someone said something about it, and it's suddenly come into the public domain. But overall, if I'd looked at it before, I would have just said, look, this is range bound. And it's very rare that markets do this. Like, usually you get a build up, you get an indication that something like this is going to happen, but it's not impossible. I have seen it happen. It's rare, but it could be in either direction as well. Like, you could have something that's just going along like this and then suddenly just dips down, which is why people will always say that when you're trading, you should have a stop loss level. The problem with this is a stop loss level wouldn't save you, but it would save you something. But what does one do after the market's effectively trebled or even more in value? I'd have to know a little bit. In this instance, I'd have to know a little bit about what set the market off like this, and I think it's kind of encouraging in some ways for the bigger picture, but also this is the sort of thing I'd expect much later in the cycle, like when everybody's jumping in and they're all looking for the next big thing, and then you get these sort of crazy moves that are almost like indicative of the end. But at this stage, it's just, it's right, I think, that people are finding undervalued, kind of inverted commas, gems, but I'd like to know a bit more about why this has done this. As far as the price action goes, where is it? No, it's not on here. I was going to try and choose a different one because it looked slightly different on. Actually, I'm going to go back to this OKB. So I found it on here, and it looked, the chart looked a bit better because I've got these three resistance points, 1, 2, 3, and then it broke out. And I suppose from a short-term trading perspective, with it closing at the high, this was the breakout point. I mean, this was the buy point again. So after it did this and then came back down again, it went 1, 2, 3. On the fourth, it's broken out. So as long as it holds over 130, I can justify a short-term trade. Whether I say this is a long-term trade is a completely different matter, because it's so volatile. I don't know whether it's going to go up to like 160, 180, and then just come all the way back down again. I'll have to be literally trading it rather than investing it. So in the short term, I'd say it's a buy, as long as it holds over 130. But it's not a long-term trade. And as I say, I still need to know, although I do just look at the charts, something as unusual as this, where there was no build-up, it just suddenly explodes. I want to know why that's happened.
Yeah, they're very active on their Twitter. I'm trying to search for that because clearly that kind of price action has to do with some kind of announcement that came August 4th or August 5th. Yeah. So some kind of some kind of announcement. Now, OKB is the token for the exchange OKX. So what's interesting, that's not a price chart. There's a price chart. What's interesting about their history is, exchange tokens have done well, even in bear markets, at least a couple exchange tokens. Binance's token did really well, even during the 2019-2020 bear market. So did OKB, OKX's token. So this is 2019. So during the bear market, when everything's down, OKB went all the way up. Now peaking at here in May 2021, when a lot of cryptos peaked. But look at this. It then did the double peak like a lot of things did during that cycle, and it pulled back a little bit down to $11. But during the bear market, went all the way up to $50 and really hovered between $35 and $50. And then broke suddenly the upside, which tells you that's due to some kind of announcement for OKX related to their token. Maybe additional functionality was added to the token, something. So you can't really trade this. So unless you had information about what was going to happen, you got lucky and caught this pump, but you couldn't have expected this even if you were an expert price analysis, because this was suddenly announced and the price just jumped tremendously. And I don't suggest anyone chase green candles. It usually ends poorly. I was watching one of the major YouTube channels the other day, and they were talking about ETH, and they're like, ETH is going crazy, and they have some referral link to a leverage trading platform, and they're like, you could take out a 2x leverage on ETH, and you won't get liquidated unless it goes down half. And they were talking about it right here, which is a terrible idea. So they took out a 2x leverage. They did terrible, but this person's been in crypto since 2017 and yet hasn't learned the lesson about chasing green candles. It usually ends poorly because 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think ETH is going to be bullish from here, but 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Don't chase green candles. We don't chase green candles either with things like this. So, I mean, look, in the last month, it just went boom all the way up to here. You might look and be like, well, it came down to 94 and it's up to 140. You're right. I don't know what precipitated this move, and maybe it continues forward from here, but realize a lot of those gains have already been made. It went from $50 up to $115. Now it's at $139, almost $140. So it's almost 3x from where it was. And to chase green candles, a lot of times people sell something that's not moving, hasn't made its move yet, to roll into something that's made part of its move. And that usually doesn't work out for them. All right. Mike Jones, they manipulate by fudding people out while the big money buys and buy OTC buys, not affecting the API price. They are really fudding everyone out of ETH and shorted it to death only to let it rise again. Yeah, I think a lot of institutions have been secretly buying ETH before it started to pump. Now it's pumped up tremendously. And I think there's still institutional appetite for ETH. And they're kind of letting the pedal off the gas so that they can try to buy more cheap is, I think, what's happening behind the scenes. You're right. Big money doesn't let you know it's buying until after it's bought. Then it will talk about it. All right, let's take a look at, like, is OKB a buy? No, for me, it's wait, or even, take profits if you happen to know that this was coming or whatever. And I would be rolling that into something still cheap. So for me, it would either be a sell or a wait. Oh, there we go. All right, let's take a look at our next one, MNT, which has also been a mover.
Yeah. I was just curious, on the breakout, do we know why that happened, and do we know what they do?
For OKB?
Yeah.
OKB, they're the OKX exchanges token. I was looking through the news and I didn't see in the time that I had to see what came out August 4th or 5th that could have precipitated that.
Okay. I just wondered. I guess I can go and have a look. Yeah, I mean, yeah, for me, that was kind of crucial as to why that had happened, because it was so unusual. But
Clearly some kind of announcement or some
Ye-
kind of change.
yeah, but I get your reservations, and I get exactly why you would say that. But onto MNT, which is, I think this is the right chart, a very interesting chart, and it's good that we're looking at this. So what we can see clearly is you have one major top here, correction, major top again, correction, and almost within the same period, we're back up again, looking at these levels. Now, I like things like this because in technicals, in order to get a breakout, you've got to retest levels like this that, you know, not 100% guaranteed it's going to break out. But if you look at the bigger picture of anything, it started way down and it took out a high and it kept going up. And that's part of trading with the trend. Now, of course, if you're doing a lot of research and you look at, you're watching it all the time, there are better times to get in. I mean, there was an inverse head and shoulders here, which would have been a better time to buy on this breakout at 0.85, but I wasn't looking at it and it wasn't on the radar. But what I can say about this here is that as long as it stays within this area, it will look very bullish, and it has the potential, of course, to take out this high, which is not very far away. So for me, I've mentioned this before, you can, well, it's not a question of what I do, it's a question of what you do. But for me, I don't mind buying something that's hovering below a low, or a big high like this, because there's potential for it to break through and to accelerate that trend. And the short-term price action is looking interesting because it keeps stopping at this 140 level, $1.40. And if it just breaks a little bit through there, that is an indication that the trend wants to keep going up. Now, I've always said that I also need a parachute level, a level to get out if I'm wrong. And that I can see on a long-term basis, or a longer-term basis would be this trend line. You can see we've got a crossover of the moving averages there, which is a good sign. It's actually going up at quite a fast rate here, which may be unsustainable. So it could come back to this line and break it. Now, would that be the end of the trend? Not necessarily. But if I was looking at a short-term trade, this is something that I could use. As long as it stays above this line, I would hold in this position, expecting a breakout. So if I buy at 132, I'm like out if it closes below this line from a short-term trade. And then, from a long-term perspective, even if it comes back to 120 or maybe a bit more, I'll be looking at different retracement levels to decide whether it's still okay. So I think it's a really interesting point. I'm going to say it's a short-term buy because for me, but I would, if someone else was asking, I would say, I would be looking for it to confirm it wants to break out, which would mean getting over this high here, and possibly over this point here as well. But I would normally say this point, but because it is holding against resistance so nicely, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's building up that ceiling here. I think that's quite a nice trigger point for me. But yeah, you'd have to respect this level as well. They're so close together. But if it breaks up here, it'd be a bit disappointing if it just went to 142 and then came off. I'd expect the momentum to be enough to take it through there, and that's what I'd be looking for: a sharp green bar that takes it cleanly through this resistance and cleanly through that. And if you don't get that in a couple of days, it's going to break the trend line anyway. So I'd be out of the short-term trade, looking for something else. So for me, it's a short-term buy with some caveats, and it's an interesting looking chart.
It is an interesting looking chart. I like this type of trade much better than the other one we were looking at with OKB, because there's no history to see where it might go. It's broken out to the upside, and maybe it's due for a big retracement. Who knows? This kind of chart is a little bit more predictable. Now, it's not completely predictable. The third time something's coming up to this top resistance, it often will break through, but it doesn't always break it through. So this is what's called a lopsided trade, meaning if it breaks through, you will likely get a lot of gains, whereas if it comes back down, you can put a stop loss, and so you can exit, meaning you'll lose a little bit with potential to gain a lot. I think that's why you like this one, Paul.
Yeah.
And it we'll see, like, this forms a nice little W pattern. I like to look for these nice W's. See how it comes down. It's kind of smooth, comes up, comes back down, smooth. And often, what would you say percentage chance it breaks the upside would be? About 60% or 65%?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say 60 to 70% is fair, because it's got a good trend. I think you have to look around at other things as well. And remember, I was saying about how ETH had moved a massive percentage to the upside, and then it sort of continued up and then had this short-term sharp correction. I think that's got to be put into context as well. There will be people who's sitting in this from down here that want to take some profits. So we've got to bear that in mind. But yeah, I think it's the momentum is still with the move. And when I look at how the market topped out from technical discipline, you got to wait for the market to tell you that there's a top. And there's evidence of a top there. The way it failed to break out and came back very aggressively. That was the first sign. Then a rally that was weaker, and then there's more to indicate that was a top, and it was failing. And the same here. So it is possible it could do something like this. But I also think we're in a different stage where altcoins should hopefully start to outperform this for the rest of this period, and at some stage they could really really move aggressively. So if we were at a different stage, I'd say I'd be more cautious, but I don't think we've had the ending move yet, so I'm still looking for bullish breakouts.
Yeah, here's the Bitcoin dominance chart. And in 2017, so the major runs in altcoins have been 2017, 2021. And I think we're looking to see that in 2025. So in 2017, you see Bitcoin's dominance versus the altcoins. Bitcoin had pretty much, altcoins were a new thing. There were very few altcoins, and the few that there were just mostly copies of Bitcoin, other than a few outliers like XRP, Stellar Lumens, and ETH that actually had some utility that they were building. Though a lot of their utility, those were still very early days. But in 2017, ETH started to come forward with some of their utility start to work, and some other altcoins started being launched. And we we had through most of 2017 altcoins doing ICOs and other things and popping off, culminating in January 2018 is when altcoins peaked. And Bitcoin's dominance went way, way, way down. And then Bitcoin over the bear market started to really climb up again. But this time only came up to 73%. Why? Because altcoins with specific use cases, I think, have functionality. I think Web3 is a thing, and cryptocurrency or these altcoins make Web3 a thing. So I don't think Bitcoin's dominance can ever go back to as high as it was. And even you see it losing steam between the 4-year cycles while still gaining some big momentum. So it peaked out at 73%. Then we had the 2021 run. So it peaked in December 2020. And then altcoins really started to kick off January, February, March. And then a second one later that year, pushing Bitcoin's dominance down again. And then over the bear market, Bitcoin's dominance climbing, and I think peaking at 66%. And so already we see it sliding here. I think Bitcoin's dominance is going to continue to slide. And look how fast when it slides, it slides. It's quite fast. So it's not confirmed that it's going down at those kind of rates yet. But look what it did here, where it came down, it kind of traded sideways for a little bit, and then as the altcoins took off, which is really just a reflection that the altcoins took off, because even during this time, Bitcoin's price was rising in January, February, March, but the altcoins were rising much faster than it. So that's what we're looking at. That's what's coming up. That's what's exciting for me. I'm mostly in the higher risk altcoins. So am I in things like Mantle? No, I'm not. It's got a fairly high market cap of 4.5 billion. Though if I were a day trader, I would be probably taking this trade. That's just not my style. I invest over the 4-year market. So generally in the bear market, I'm loading up on things that are massively undervalued, and I'm rolling them into things that I think will do really well. Now, if some get ahead early, then sometimes I'll take some out of what's getting ahead early and roll it into what I think is still undervalued. But if I were a day trader, this is the type of trade I take. I'm just not. So Mantle isn't my type of buy. I look for mostly what I bought is altcoins, 100 million market cap and less, preferably under a $20 million market cap. Now, the few things I hold that are higher market caps is Cardano and XRP. Now, XRP particularly, has an interesting story that I think XRP does really, really well, even though its market cap is so high already. All right, let's jump to the next one, which is PENGU. Now, normally I don't buy meme coins, but on the Wednesday shows, because we're looking at price action, we will definitely cover them.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a quick thing about the Bitcoin dominance chart, which I think, we were looking at this move here and then the potential for it to continue down. But also, if you look at this move up here, the rate that it's been moving up has been slowed compared to the move down, which for me indicates that this isn't a sustainable move, and when it turns, it will turn relatively quickly. We've also got these moving averages crossing over the long term and the medium term, crossing down, actually crossing now. And although it briefly crossed here, the last time that happened was near the low. So it had this consolidation period where it just went sideways. Then we got this final bullish cross, which has taken us effectively all the way up to this point here, which is now looking like a fairly significant bearish cross. So it's definitely worth watching, and it's all sort of part and parcel of what could be happening in this period. This strong altcoin season would make a lot of sense, because that should run into the final move. It would make more sense if things go crazy in this area for it to then build up to the ultimate high where everyone's all in. But those are we're a few steps away from that, so let's just see. But PENGU, I guess, is one of those ones that is important, because it's, if you're going to look at anything that could potentially burst the bubble of of crypto, it's going to be the meme coins going downwards first because there's nothing behind them. And when that speculation's gone, there's no real business behind it to support the price. So this is definitely at some stage going to end badly, I would say, for all of them. But it's just a question of where it goes to, in between. And clearly there's money that can be made. It's just one of those things where you got to surf in and out and not get hurt. But yeah, I mean, in the short term, I prefer a longer term chart here. I don't know if there is one really, but what we've got, downward trend, small double bottom here, then a bigger double bottom here. This is a really good breakout point, and the trend has been continuing up. It's tried to extend from this prior high. You can see how it's completely matched. So that is the level it needs to break in order to continue the trend. For me, that would be the buy signal, the buy breakout signal. This looks like a short-term double top. So whilst it's below 3.1 cents, I'd have to wait. Now we could wait to see how much of this it retraces, and putting what are called Fibonacci retracement levels, which is just a fancy way of saying you just divide the range up and look to see where support comes in, usually at 38.2, 50%, or 61.8 would be the first points, but 50% is a usual one, and that comes in around here at 2.5 cents. So I'd be waiting to see whether 2.5 cents finds support, but I would probably wager that there's other better looking products perhaps to find, and and depending on what they are, they may help you to sleep at night a bit better as well. But I'm not saying it won't go higher. It could well do, and I think it probably will. I think it's most likely it will, given the environment we're in. But in the very short term, it looks like it wants to correct a bit more. So I'll be looking. It'll be a wait for me. Move to 2.5 cents and then back up.
Yeah. PENGU is interesting. So is the Ape coin. So both of these came from NFT projects that launched an NFT that then launched a meme coin associated with them. Now, there may end up actually being some functionality to Ape coin. I wouldn't be surprised if over time they find some functionality for Pudgy Penguins token as well. If I were to buy meme coins, the Ape and PENGU would be some of the most interesting to me. PENGU bottomed out here after being super hyped as it launched and everyone talking about it. You see, when everyone's talking about it, it's late and there's usually a correction in. Now, it did correct pretty significantly, down almost 90%. Now it's been going back up and it looks like it wants to break higher. Now, it is like a canary in the coal mine. And what's interesting is when the altcoin market really starts to run, I wouldn't be surprised if we see meme coins run first. And meme coins, as well as like ETH and the ISO tokens and meme coins. And a lot of people are brand new getting into crypto. The first thing they often come into is XRP, sometimes Cardano, and Solana and meme coins. So I wouldn't be surprised if Pudgy Penguins token does really well in that environment. And then, like Paul was saying, they usually go down first too of the altcoins. That's when you see meme coins tanking in the altcoin rally, that's your indication that probably everything else will follow shortly after. So keep an eye on the canary in the coal mine, which is meme coins. Pudgy Penguins is one of the bigger ones. So for me, it's not a buy. I just don't buy this. I do like the price action overall. 2 step forward, 1 step back. I think he's right. There's going to be more correction first, and then it's probably going to run more. Let's take a look next at WAN chain, and then we'll look at our viewer suggestions that we have. And we do have to keep this short. So Paul has another one of his clients or people that he works with that needs his time. So let's look at at one chain.
Yeah. So so one chain. Now we last looked at it when it was around here, I think, or close to it. And for me, again, this is the breakout point. This is a perfect example of where waiting for the breakout or not waiting is a trader's choice. It's an investor's choice. And I would personally want to buy just below the breakout point, but it didn't break out. It came back and it went up again. And for me, that's acceptable, because it's still got rising lows and it's still close to the kind of interesting bit, which is the base completes on a break of this line. Now, this most recent move down is a little. It's a little not. I want to don't want to use the word worrying, but it's just a little more than I would have liked because it's got close to the breakout point. It's got right there to do it. It's almost like climbing almost to the top of a mountain and then not getting to the summit. And it's like, well, why wouldn't you just go there? So it's a bit frustrating that it hasn't broken out over that point. It's come back down again and it's resting on this support line. Now, I still like the fact that it's in this pattern. It's not, sometimes they do extend, sometimes they take a bit longer to break. And as long as the lows are rising, which they are, and it's respected this line really nicely, I think it's still in play. It's just that it's not as good for me here. I mean, you might argue it's cheaper, so that it's better. But for me, I'm looking at momentum, and there was more momentum into this move that should have taken it through rather than the momentum of it here, which is more it's swinging back down again. So that all kind of shakes out into it's a weight at this point, but that line is holding nicely. And if it holds into this area into next week, could argue that it's a short-term buy with a stop loss below. But really the confirmation breakout has to be a move through 13 cents, which is clear support back here, which makes it resistance. It got there, bounced over it. So this is a very key area. I do think eventually it will break, but it's just a question of, is it going to do it now? Is it going to do it in a month? I just don't know. So I'm going to have to wait for it to do that now as proper confirmation. But as you can see, it's respecting this line. It is moving up, and at the very least, it's trying to build some form of base, and that's a really nice looking trigger point. If and when it gets through it, that'll be a very clean signal. So anywhere in this area here, I don't want to be sort of, waiting 2 or 3 weeks to look at it. I want to be looking at it on a day-to-day basis as soon as it starts to approach this area, because the risk of a breakout for me accelerates. And as we've seen, when things go, they can go quite quickly. So it's a wait for the moment. But I am, shall we say, optimistic that it will come back to it and we'll be looking at it again.
Yeah. One chain, one of our strategic partners here on the channel, and I only agree to strategic partners from companies I believe in their long term. In one chain, I've liked since 2019. They talked way back then, maybe even 2018, about cross-chain communication, and all these chains were like silos that couldn't operate together. And now, really, this last year, their vision has fully been realized, where they have a great bridge system, but then they integrate on top of that Xflow. So you can send, say, USDT you have on the Binance Smart Chain, and you want to get over to Polygon as USDC, or you want to convert it to Bitcoin, wrap Bitcoin on the ETH market. Like, there's a lot that you can do without having to do the individual trades. It handles sending your funds from one chain to another, and even swapping tokens to the major tokens within that. It's amazing. I love that what they started way back when they launched, I think 2018, is really being realized now. So a lot of times technology and software takes a while to get to where it's doing what they plan to have it do. It now does so much what they plan to have it do. They even integrated in burning the WAN token as these trades happen. And so the vision of what they talked about, they wanted to do way back then, is now being realized. And the market hasn't caught up to that, which is fine. A lot of the focus has been off of DeFi. That's the opportunity that I look for. So I want things that are undervalued, that like the opportunity is clear, like the functionality is clear, but yet the price hasn't caught up to it yet. Those are the situations I like. I felt like Cardano was in that situation in 2019, 2020, that the opportunity was way more clear. The evidence was there for this project and nobody was talking about it, and everyone was flooding the price because its price was down, and they were using that as evidence that the price would always stay down. And they were just wrong. And Cardano went 200x from the bottom. WAN chain's price has been punished by the bear market. And some people look at the price and they say, oh, it hasn't done well, so therefore they conclude it's not going to do well. But fundamentally, the project is really, really strong. It's got a market cap of only 22 million. And yet what they've done with their bridge and then their XLOs is tremendous. And this doesn't reflect what their technology is allowing people to do. And I think as DeFi comes into focus, that's when you see a major correction in the upside on WAN chain. I like buying cheap. It's ridiculously cheap at 11 cents. And I love that. Not quite as cheap as this bottom it hit, but right near there. I mean, fundamentally, it's probably about as cheap as it's going to get. Maybe it gets even cheaper, but it's like a massive, massive sale already. And you know, part of the principle that I use is I buy low and sell high, and this is low to me, so it's definitely a buy. All right, let's jump into OMI. Kuma suggested we take a look at OMI. Let's look at OMI. Then we have time to look at Chris's suggestion of SHX. And Mike Jones. Mike, I didn't see your super chat come through this week, but you did do one last time. We'll take a look at DevStream too, and that's all we have time for. So we'll look at OMI, SHX, and then DEVS for DevStream.
Okay, so OMI headline is it's still in this consolidation. It's not done enough to look bullish, but it's definitely easing off the bearish momentum. What I'm looking for is the sort of move that's outside of what it's done before in order to indicate the market dynamics are changing. We've still got bearish lines coming in that need to be broken. These two highs, very simple. You know, it's given that it's a falling line, even if it just stays stable, it will eventually break it. And that's kind of step one. I think last week or the week before, I can't remember when we last looked at it, it was showing some evidence of building an upward trend. That was this trend rate that it kind of fell back into. And then it's now formed this upward trend, which is at a very modest rate. It's not a strong rate at this point. So it's not enough to say that it's on the move. It's going. But it is enough to say, well, look, it has been going sideways for quite some time. You know, it's not particularly far away from where it was in April, which means that if this was a downward trend and continuing at this rate, it would actually be much lower. Now, that's a good sign. That's kind of step one. But step two is that it actually starts to go higher, which is the most important thing. It's got to print higher highs and higher lows to make the trend look like it is over. Well, the downward trend is over, and the new trend is starting to the upside. Now, whatever news that came out was enough perhaps to cause this spike up to this resistance point, but it's not been sustained. So whether there's people who who are getting rid of supply on good news. I don't know, but we're still like it's still equivocal because we haven't broken up, but we haven't broken down either. So it's still in this range. So it's a kind of wait and see, really. But it has looked more interesting recently. Whereas, when we've looked at it in the past, the trend has just been aggressively down, and it's been like clear that, yeah, it looked like it was going to get a bit cheaper, and it's just been punctuated by short-term buy points, which this being one of them. And this was an exciting point where I really thought, well, that was it. But then it came back in again. It was a bit disappointing. Then it tried to do it again. We've got a lower high. So that's why this line is so important and why it needs to really take that out. If it wants to show that something new has happened here, it's got to take that line out. But, it could be building a bigger base. It's just going to take a bit more time, I guess. So for me, it's still a wait.
Yeah. I'm not surprised that it's a wait for you at this level. There's no indication of the price breaking out. There was some fundamental news, but it's not reflected in the price yet. And the fundamental news was they gave it an even stronger use case for the token. So in the future, right now you can buy and sell assets on VV, digital collectibles. So like Disney, Star Wars, some DC, Marvel Comics as well. And you buy them in gems for now. And in the future, you'll still be able to buy them on gems, but you'll be able to sell the collectible either on the app through gems, or you can sell them on Stacker, which is a partner of VV, for the OMI token. Now, what they announced is in the future, you will not be able to cash out from gems back to fiat currency. So you'll only be able to cash out to OMI, meaning you'll have to sell on Stacker for the OMI token. Now, that may free up the project so they no longer have to do KYC on people using the app, which will make the barrier to entry for the app way lower. And that is a huge add for how many people are going to use the app. If they get rid of KYC, there's a lot of ETH whales that have their identity private that don't want to have to come on VV and KYC. And that would put this in the realm of being able to roll some of their gains from regular NFTs into these premium digital collectibles. So that was some big news. Also big news for OMI, in that you'll only be able to cash out to OMI. So it's just a stronger use case for the token itself. And what is the price done with that? Nothing. The price is still way, way down. And a lot of people see that as a bad thing. That's not. I like buying cheap. Now, I would love some of my other holdings to really run up tremendously from here so that I can load up more OMI. The amount of OMI I have, I probably paid 200 to 250,000 for the amount of OMI that I have. And had I known that it would be this cheap, I wish I could have had a magic crystal ball to know that it would ever be this cheap. So I could have just waited with all that cash on the sidelines and bought all this OMI right now at these prices. That would have been incredible. But I don't have a magic crystal ball, so I just have to dollar cost average in the ones that I like as they get cheap. For example, Cardano, though it bottomed at 1.7 cents, I didn't know where the bottom was going to be, so I was buying it at 11 cents, at 9 cents. 7 cents, at 5 cents. I loaded up and doubled my position at 3 cents, which was an amazing dollar cost average, as then the token went to $3.30 in the bull market. But only I didn't know where the bottom was. I would have loved to know it would ever get this cheap, which is incredibly cheap. Had I bought all my OMI here, I'd be sitting at over 1 billion OMI right now, which would be amazing. I didn't know it'd get this cheap, so I can just ask myself, can I buy more? And at this price, it's extremely attractive. So for me, it definitely gets a buy. They announced some major fundamental improvements, and yet the price hasn't yet gone up. I think that's a great thing for those that like buying cheap. And, only 5% of people out there really get this concept of buying a project when fundamentals are strong, yet price is cheap, and then waiting to see how it plays out. All right, let's take a look at our next one, which is SHX.
Okay. Yeah, SHX. So the chart's been looking bullish. It's been something that hopefully we maybe picked up on before this breakout here, but it looks very similar to the first chart that we looked at, OKB. You know, the way it was pressing against some resistance, and then from a short-term perspective, it's gone through, and it's also managed to get through some very key longer-term resistance points. But I guess, you know, I don't guess, it's like you will have retracements. You can't have it all your own way. And if the market goes too far too fast, it's not a great sign anyway from the long-term perspective. So it really boils down to what sort of trader you are. And it's a good idea if you're a short-term trader that if you buy a breakout, you exit some of the position um, on a short-term move, because it can obviously do something like this. So, you know, you capture some of the profit and then run the rest. And if it, you know, goes back to where you bought it or just a little bit below, you'll still end up exiting with something. But if it continues going higher, then you end up with a bigger profit, and it's less psychologically difficult to hold. It's easier to hold, in other words, because you're sort of playing with profits rather than playing with your own capital. But that's all part of strategy. And the reason why I think about these things is because these are the things that determine or can determine where the market sort of retraces to, whether it breaks out and continues higher and all that sort of stuff, because the market is based on psychology. So what we've got here is a breakout of this resistance, which was a really great indication of a continuation of the trend. So if we look at it here, and so then profit takings come in, brought it back to this prior support point, which was the breakout point. Now that should hold, and it's sort of stopped there and it's gone sideways. You know, it could clearly break this trend line. It's like this trend line's been working very nicely since the beginning of July, but it is moving at quite a clip. So is it reasonable to expect it to move at that sort of clip until the end of the year? Possibly not, but it'd be very nice if it does. It's more likely that it will break that and then move up at a more sustainable, what would be a sustainable angle of trend. But overall, as far as is there a reversal pattern? No. It's a continuation of or continuing what has been a bullish breakout. That's through the high. So for me, it's like if you flip this over and it looked inverse, it would be a sell because it's moving into new lows. Um, so yeah, I would still think that this has got more to go on the upside, and the fact that it's holding over this trend line as well, I think is a good sign. Now, if it breaks that trend line, I'll be looking at the support points where it should stop, and then be thinking more about exiting or you know, lightening up the strategy to protect profits, etc. But for now, you know, it's all it's done is broken out and then just come back one step. So, you know, I don't want to use the word hopefully, but let's see if it holds on to this point, which has both got the breakout point and the trend line with which it could lean against, and then continue to move higher. So for me, it's still on my, still call it a buy. Um, Even on this breakout point, like this can be a good place to step in when the market's taken the high out. You don't always get a second bite of the cherry by it coming back like this, but this is not a bad place if you haven't got a position to step in and put a stop, because if it goes wrong, then you've got a very tight stop, and if it goes right, you know, you're still going with the trend, and that's what we want to try and do. So for me, it's still a buy.
I want to add some additional context there. We've got a little bit more history on trading or on CoinMarketCap on its price. And that has been at this price before, and it was at this price at the previous bull run. And it is coming right up to there, right up to there. So it's been on, the bottom was mid-bear market in June 2023. And here it is right at that decision point that it's either going to come back some or it's going to break to the upside. Interesting.
I
Market
mean,
cap.
that makes it even more interesting, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because the chart you were looking at just shows since it's been on MEXC, which didn't show this history all the way back into 2021, which is interesting. Its price is up about 8x from the bottom, almost 9x from the bottom. So it's been a pretty strong climb so far. Now, for me, I can't buy this. I don't chase green candles, even if it's gonna. The type of trade that I've taken is I try to find things when they're down somewhere near this and take the right up. It's already gotten 10x of its gain, so I can't go in and buy this. Now, if I were a day trader, I might be buying this because probability that it breaks the upside is good enough, and if it does break the upside, it might run pretty solidly. So I'd be just taking a trade where the upside risk or the upside potential is bigger than the downside risk, and I'd put in a stop loss. That's not my type of trade. My type of trade is looking for things that are cheap. So this already kind of run away from what I would be buying. And so for me, it's just a wait. Although for those that got in anywhere near here through strong fundamental analysis, I'm sure you're quite enjoying the ride here. This is the type of thing that I really like to see, though it wasn't on my radar when it was cheap like that. All right, let's take a look at DEVS, DevStream Corp, that is on the stock exchange.
I guess I wonder if we're looking at this on the basis of what it might do for the actual token. But as far as the price action goes, the split hasn't really helped. And I'm not really sure why they did the split in the first place, because as we talked about before, you do a split if your price is, really high, like, $200,000, $500,000, and you want to make it look a bit cheaper. There was this potential base. We had this left shoulder, this head, this right shoulder, which was kind of building up. We were looking for support to hold potentially around here, and it hasn't done that, and it's just sunk below this level. So this pattern is not completely negated, but it's not what we can operate from. And the big buy signal would have been higher up anyway. It was just we would be looking for that support to hold. Now it's gone lower, and the support point where it stopped is a key one, because this is the start of this very sharp breakout. So this area here is very, very important support, and it's stopped there on 1, 2, 3 occasions, and it's still leaning on it. Now the problem with this is you can look at support in two ways. You can look at it in an area to buy, but personally I don't mind buying it up here or even much higher, but once this is confirmed. The problem might be that if this doesn't hold, we don't have a lot of leeway before it's testing the all-time low on the chart and possibly even lower. And, that's technically, I can't justify buying something like that. That's not something that within the discipline of technical analysis, again, I just can't justify it. So this area here needs to hold. It could hold. It has held for 3 times, but there's still this downward pressure. So I'm a little concerned about it as to whether this is going to hold or not. I'm not quite sure why it's got this issue, and it's done this event. Perhaps they just thought it like a marketing exercise, it might help the stock, but it's much better to have really good fundamentals, I would say. But either way, I would say it needs to hold this, and I don't mind looking at it again next week to see whether it has or not, and we can take it from there. But I wouldn't personally. It's not something that I would buy. I can't justify it technically. I mean, I could say it's a buy because it's come back to this level, but I'd rather look for something, even very small, that's bullish on the chart, i.e. see these 2 lows. If it breaks above there and it's confirmed this as support, that for me is enough. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't hold this level. It could well do. And, you know, there are other people that using their own technical analysis, they will say that that's a buy point because this is confirmed support from before. So everybody has a different way of approaching it. But, you know, for me, I'd like to see something in the bigger picture that also supports a shorter term trade. And as I've mentioned before, a lot of that is dynamics. If it put in a very sharp upward move, that might tell me that things have changed. So you could probably work out that my view here is that it's, for me, a wait. And yeah, and I think we would have to come back to it to see, you know, what it does over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I don't buy stocks, and so would I buy stocks if I bought stocks? Probably. I like buying cheap, and it's come back down for a second bite of the apple as cheap. Is there any indication on the chart that it's turning around yet? No, and that's what Paul looks for. I don't mind buying when there's no indications turning around because I'm buying based on fundamentals and what I think of the team leading the project, what narrative they're in, and so just using very different metrics. And so is it cheap enough? Yes. If I were buying stocks, yes, I would like it quite a bit. I think as Devi does really well, DevStream does incredibly well, and I expect in the coming 4 months that altcoins are really going to take off. So probably this stock would take off as well. Just stocks aren't my thing anymore. Once I found crypto, a few years, I guess it was 4 years after being in crypto that I even moved all my real estate holdings into crypto as well, because just really high volatility, really high potential for gains, really strong potential for losses if you don't learn what you're doing. But once you do learn what you're doing, you can mitigate your risks so that you, when you're taking the right kind of bets, it's a lot easier to win more than you're losing. Right, Paul, thank you for joining us. I know there's a lot of pressures on your time today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks, guys. And yeah, look forward to chatting next week.
All right. And for those that are in our private group, the gold members, Paul will be joining us Friday before our regular chat on Friday. So Friday morning, a little bit earlier, Paul's going to join us an hour earlier than our regular chat for those gold members. So if you're in the gold group, join us, and I will send out a link an hour before our regular chat starts.
See you then.
All right. Thanks, Paul. We'll see you then.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right. So what's going on with crypto now? Well, this is the time we waited for, and you've had to be patient because it wasn't clear when in 2025 a lot of this breakout would happen. What happened early, a little bit of it came early as Trump victory when he won the election. That was bullish for crypto, as a lot of the Biden administration in the US wasn't very crypto friendly, and Trump was promising to be a lot more crypto friendly. Seems like he's delivering on that promise so far, but we've definitely seen a huge change in the Securities and Exchange Commission's tone towards crypto. They've dropped a lot of lawsuits. They're dropping more. They're not creating new lawsuits to try to persecute and prosecute crypto, and trying to be clear with what the guidelines are so that there's clarity in the space so that entrepreneurs can build products and services that people want and need using blockchain technology. And they can fund their business through crypto tokens, as well as if they want to do stock related to their company. It's just the guidelines are more clear. So that's a great thing for crypto. And because of that, you're probably going to see a lot of institutional money rolling into crypto. I think a lot of it is already behind the scenes. But in major institutions buy, then they talk about buying. They don't talk about buying and then buy because it will pump the price before they've even made their purchases. So they buy in secret, then later they disclose what it is that they were buying. And I think a lot of that buying in secret is happening. I think that's what's been moving the ETH price. I think they had been loading up on Bitcoin. They've been loading up on ETH. They've even been loading up on XRP. And I think later they're going to be talking about that a lot as that then FOMOs retail into things. It's going to be an interesting 4 months from now. So here we are almost getting near the end of August, and we've got September, October, November, and December. I expect a lot of the action is going to really get going. Now, we may be lucky that it then pulls back, and then we have an amazing run next year as well. But stay tuned for this next 4 months, because I think the market is showing us signs that it really wants to run and is going to run. It'll be fun. Enjoy this wrap. You know what this is all about. We'll see y'all soon.
Came into the space chasing all of the games, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit right before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. To buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I stick the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, to leave in a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling the parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the ball will bring back the games. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, say the haters be cracking. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough. And that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.